stepmother used to say I was nothing, not her child, not her responsibility, just something she had to tolerate. And my father, he never corrected her, not once. I think that's the part that hurt the most. Not the way she looked at me, but the way he didn't. Because when my mom died, he promised me something. He said, no matter what happens, I'll always choose you. I believed him. I was 11, and I believed him. But promises don't mean much when someone new walks into your life and decides you don't belong in it. She came in quietly at first, smiling, soft voice, always asking if I needed anything. It almost felt like things might be okay. Like, maybe we could be a real family again. But that didn't last long. Because the moment she realized my father would always take her side, everything changed. And I mean everything. Suddenly, I wasn't his daughter anymore. I was the problem, the extra mouth, the reminder of a life she didn't want. She never said it directly, not at first, but you don't need words to understand when someone hates you. You feel it in the way they ignore you, in the way they speak over you, in the way they smile, just a little too sweet when other people are watching. And then the rules started, new rules, rules that only applied to me. I wasn't allowed to sit at the table unless I was invited. I had to eat after everyone else finished. I had chores, but not normal chores. Everything was mine: cleaning, cooking, laundry, even things that weren't mine to fix. And if I didn't do it perfectly, she would sigh, that quiet, disappointed sigh, like I was exactly what she expected me to be, a mistake. And my father, he saw all of it. He just chose not to see me. That was the moment I understood something. I wasn't part of that house anymore. I was just living in it. And the worst part, I stayed for years. I stayed quiet. I stayed invisible. I told myself, if I just endure this a little longer, things will change. But they didn't. They got worse because one day she stopped pretending. And that was the day everything finally broke. And the day I realized if I wanted a place in this world, I was going to have to take it. At school, I learned how to become small, not physically, just emotionally. I learned how to talk less, how to laugh softly, how to never mention home. Because when your life starts to feel strange, you notice something very quickly. Other people can tell. They may not know exactly what's happening, but they can tell when a kid is carrying something too heavy. I stopped inviting friends over after the first time she embarrassed me in front of one of them. Her name was Hannah. We were working on a history project together, and she came over after school because the library had already closed. At first, everything seemed normal. My stepmother smiled when she opened the door. She even offered us lemonade. I remember thinking, maybe I was wrong about her. Maybe she only acted that way when we were alone. But halfway through our project, she walked into the kitchen, looked directly at me, and said, "Did you finish scrubbing the upstairs bathroom yet?" I froze. Hannah looked at me, then at her. I said quietly, "I was doing homework." And my stepmother just tilted her head and smiled. That wasn't my question. I can still remember the silence that came after that. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse. It was humiliating. I told Hannah I wasn't feeling well and asked if we could finish the project at school the next day. She left 10 minutes later, and she never came over again. After that, I stopped letting people get close enough to ask questions. It was easier that way. At home, the rules kept changing. That was the trick she used. It was never about order. It was never about discipline. It was about control. If the kitchen wasn't clean, it was my fault. If dinner was cold, it was my fault. If her mood was bad, somehow that was my fault too. She had a way of turning every room into a test I was destined to fail. And when my father came home, she would become someone else. Gentle, tired, patient. She'd lower her voice and say things like, "I'm trying so hard with her," or "She's been difficult again." again, as if there had been some long history of me causing pain in that house, as if I wasn't just a girl trying to survive in it. And my father, God, this is the part people never understand. It would have been easier if he were cruel, if he had shouted, if he had told me directly that I meant nothing to him. But he didn't. He was kind in fragments. He'd bring me a notebook from the store because he remembered I liked to write. He'd ask how school was going when she wasn't around. Once, he even fixed the lamp in my room at midnight because he noticed I'd been studying in the dark. Those little moments kept me loyal to him, kept me hopeful. They made me think maybe he still loved me. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe he didn't realize how bad it had become. But love without protection doesn't feel like love for very long. It feels like abandonment wearing a softer face. Things shifted more after my half brother was born. That's when I truly disappeared. Before he came along, I was the inconvenience. After he was born, I became the threat. She watched me differently after that, like I carried some kind of disease, like my presence alone could ruin the perfect little life she had finally built. The nursery was painted before he was even born. Soft blue walls, tiny white stars on the ceiling, a rocking chair in the corner. I helped build the crib. Actually, no, that's not true. I built the crib. My father assembled part of it with me on a Saturday afternoon, but he got called away to help a neighbor, and I finished it alone while she stood in the doorway criticizing the instructions. She never thanked me, not once. But when family came to visit after the baby was born, she told everyone my father had done everything himself. That sounds small, doesn't it? A crib. A lie about a crib. But that's how it starts. That's how someone erases you. Not all at once. Piece by piece. Credit by credit. Memory by memory. Until one day, even the truth doesn't sound like it belongs to you anymore. As my brother got older, she used him the same way she used everything else in that house, as leverage. If he cried while she was busy, it was my fault for not noticing. If he made a mess, I was irresponsible for not cleaning faster. If he got sick, she'd look at me as though I had personally failed him. I was 15 the first time she told me I should be grateful they were still feeding me. I remember the exact moment because I was holding a grocery bag in each hand. One had milk and canned soup. The other had diapers and juice boxes. She had sent me to the store in the rain, on foot, because she said I needed to contribute. When I came back, soaked through my hoodie and shivering in the hallway, I put the bags down for 1 second to take off my shoes, and she looked at the puddle forming beneath me and said, "You could at least try not to act like a burden in your own condition." I stared at her. I actually stared at her because I didn't even know what that meant, my own condition. And then she laughed softly and said, "Honestly, you should be grateful we still feed you. We. Not your father, not our family. We." Like she was talking to a stray animal they'd been generous enough not to throw out. That night, I cried in the bathroom with the shower running so no one would hear me. And that was the first time I let myself think something dangerous. Not revenge, not yet, just escape. I started counting things after that. How much money I had, how many months until I turned 18, how many places in town were hiring, how many teachers might write me a recommendation if I asked. I didn't have a big plan, just fragments. But fragments are how plans begin. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I made a promise to myself. If I ever got out of that house, I would never need them again. Not for money, not for love, not for permission. I didn't know then how expensive that promise would become. I only knew one thing for certain. I was done waiting for someone to save me. The first real crack didn't happen all at once. It started quietly, like everything else in that house. I had been saving money for almost a year. Small amounts, coins from lunch, a few dollars from helping a teacher after school, birthday money I never told anyone about. I kept it hidden inside an old book in my drawer, not because I thought she would take it, but because I knew she would. There's a difference. And one afternoon, when I came home from school, The book was gone. At first, I thought I had moved it. I checked under my bed, inside my backpack, behind the dresser. Nothing. My heart started beating faster. Not panic, not yet. Just that quiet, sinking feeling that something was wrong. I walked into the kitchen. She was standing by the counter, scrolling through her phone like always. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Did you go into my room today?" She didn't even look up. Why would I do that? I swallowed. "My book is missing." That made her smile. Not a big smile, just enough. "Maybe you should keep better track of your things." I stood there for a second, waiting, because part of me still believed she would eventually say, "I'm kidding," or "I moved it somewhere safe." But she didn't. She just kept scrolling, like the conversation was already over. And that's when I understood. It wasn't about the money. It was about reminding me nothing in that house belonged to me, not even the things I earned. I didn't argue. That's what she wanted. A reaction, a mistake, a reason. Instead, I nodded once and walked back to my room. And that night, I changed something. Not outside, inside. I stopped hoping. I stopped waiting for fairness. I started watching, learning, counting. If she wanted control, I needed information. The next few weeks were different. I paid attention to everything. What time my father came home, when she checked the mail, where she kept important documents. At first, I told myself it was just to protect myself, just to be ready. But deep down, something else was forming, something sharper, something colder, and then she made a mistake. A big one. It happened on a Thursday. I remember because I had a math test that morning. I came home earlier than usual because my last class was cancelled. The house was quiet, too quiet, and that was unusual because she was always there, always watching. But that day, the living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. Even in my brother's room was silent. I almost turned around and left again. That's how strange it felt. But then I heard something. Voices, low, coming from my father's office. I wasn't supposed to go in there. That was one of her rules. So of course I did. I moved slowly down the hallway, trying not to make a sound. The door wasn't fully closed, just slightly open, enough to see light. Not enough to see clearly, but I could hear them. Her voice first, sharp, controlled. "You need to sign it before the end of the month." My father sounded tired. "I told you, I need to read it properly." "You've had weeks." "I've had work." "And I've had to deal with everything else," she snapped. There was a pause, then paper shifting, and then she said something that changed everything. "If something happens to you, I need to make sure everything goes where it should. Everything." I felt my chest tighten. My father sighed. "It's not like that." "It is exactly like that," she said, "and I'm not leaving things up to chance." Silence. Then, "Where does she fit into this?" he asked. He didn't say my name. He didn't need to. I leaned closer to the door, my heart pounding now. Not slow anymore, not quiet, loud, violent. She didn't hesitate. "She doesn't." I froze. "She's not your responsibility anymore," she continued. "You've done enough." Done enough. Like I was some kind of obligation he had already fulfilled. My father didn't respond immediately, and in that silence, I waited. I don't even know what I was waiting for. Maybe for him to say, "That's my daughter." Maybe for him to push back. Maybe for him to choose me. But instead, he said, "We'll talk about it later." That was it. That was all. No anger, no defense, no hesitation, just postponement. Like my entire existence could be scheduled for another day. I stepped back from the door, slowly, carefully, because something inside me had just snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. I went back to my room and sat on the floor. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just stared at the wall. because suddenly everything made sense. The rules, the control, the way she erased me from every part of that house. She wasn't just pushing me out, she was preparing to remove me completely, legally, and my father was letting her. That was the moment, the real moment. Not when she insulted me, not when she took my money. This. This was the moment I stopped being their daughter and started becoming something else. Because if I didn't exist in their future, then I had nothing left to lose. And that's a dangerous place to be. That night, I didn't sleep. I made a list, not a hopeful one, not an escape plan, something else, something precise, what they had, what I could access, what they didn't think I knew. Because if she wanted to write me out of their story, then I was going to rewrite it first. I didn't wait long. I couldn't. Because once you see something like that, once you hear your life being erased like it's nothing, you don't go back to normal. You can't. For the next few days, I moved carefully, too carefully. I watched everything she did, the way she handled documents, the way she checked the mail, the way she kept keys in her bag, always zipped, always close. She knew, not what I heard, but she knew something had changed. People like her always do. They notice shifts, energy, silence, control slipping, and that made her sharper, colder, more direct. The comments stopped being subtle. They became instructions, orders. Don't touch that. Stay out of this room. Finish everything before I get back. She wasn't hiding it anymore, and neither was I, because I had already decided I wasn't leaving that house empty, not after everything, not after years of being erased piece by piece. If she wanted to remove me from their future, then I was going to take something from their present. And that decision changed everything. The night it all exploded, it was raining, hard. The kind of rain that makes the world feel smaller, like everything is happening inside one moment. My father was late, again. She was already irritated. I could tell by the way she moved. Fast, sharp, loud without saying anything. My brother was crying in the living room. She told me to deal with it. I didn't move. Not immediately. And that was enough. She turned, slowly, looked at me like I had just crossed a line I wasn't allowed to see. I said, handle it. Her voice wasn't loud. That was worse. I walked past her, picked him up, tried to calm him down. But he wouldn't stop crying, and neither would she. Not out loud, but you could feel it. Building, waiting, looking for somewhere to land. And then he knocked over a glass of juice. It spilled across the table, dripped onto the floor. A small thing, a completely normal thing. But in that house, nothing was small. She snapped. Unbelievable. She grabbed a towel and threw it towards me. Clean it. I looked at the floor, then back at her. And for the first time in years, I didn't move. Not right away. Just a second, maybe two. But it was enough. What are you waiting for? She asked. Something in my chest tightened. Not fear. Something else. Something that had been growing for a long time. I didn't spill it, I said. The silence that followed felt wrong. Like the room itself didn't know how to react. She stared at me. Really stared. Like she was seeing me for the first time. Excuse me? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look away. I didn't spill it. That was it. That was all I said. But it was the first time I had ever said no, and she couldn't handle it. Her expression changed instantly. Not anger, not yet. Something colder, more calculated. She stepped closer. You think this is a discussion? I didn't answer, because now it wasn't about the juice, or the floor, or even her. It was about everything. Every moment I stayed quiet. Every time I let her decide who I was. Every time my father chose not to see me. I'm not cleaning something I didn't do, I said. Clear, simple, final. And that's when she lost control. Get out. I blinked. What? Get out! Her voice was louder now, sharp, cutting. I'm done with you. The words hit harder than I expected, not because they were new, but because this time she meant them. You don't live here anymore. There it was. No pretending, no mask, just the truth, raw and ugly. My brother was still crying. The rain was hitting the windows, and everything felt like it was collapsing into one moment. I waited for my father, for someone to stop this, for something to make sense, but no one did, because no one was coming. She pointed towards the door. Take your things and leave. I stood there, still, for a second, maybe longer. And then I laughed, not loudly, not happily, just once, because suddenly everything was clear. She thought this was the end. She thought she had won, that she had finally removed me from the equation. But she didn't understand something. I had already left, not physically, but emotionally, weeks ago. This, this was just the final step. I walked past her, not fast, not slow, just steady, went into my room, closed the door, and looked around. There wasn't much to take. A bag, some clothes, a few notebooks. That was it. Years of my life, reduced to something I could carry in one hand. I zipped the bag, took one last look, and then I stopped, because something caught my attention. My desk, specifically the drawer, the one I had started using differently, the one she never checked, not because she trusted me, but because she didn't think I was capable of anything. And that was her mistake. I opened it, slowly, carefully, and inside was everything I needed. Copies, notes, information, small things, but important. Very important. Because over the past few weeks, I hadn't just been watching, I had been preparing. I took the envelope, slipped it into my bag, closed the drawer, and walked out of the room. She was waiting in the hallway. Of course she was, arms crossed, satisfied. Finally, she said. I didn't answer. I walked past her, again, but this time I stopped at the door, not to hesitate, not to look back, just to say one thing. You're right, I said quietly. I don't live here anymore. She smiled, that small, cruel smile, and for a second I almost felt sorry for her, because she still thought this was her victory. I opened the door. The rain hit instantly, cold, sharp, real, and as I stepped outside, I realized something. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of theirs, and they had no idea what was coming. The first night was the hardest, not because I didn't know where to go, but because I finally understood. No one was coming to fix this. No second chances, no last minute apologies, no sudden realization from my father. Just me, and everything I had lost. I stayed at a bus stop for almost an hour. The rain didn't stop, it just slowed, like the world was catching its breath. I checked my phone, no messages, no calls, not even from him. That was the moment it settled in completely. I wasn't just gone from that house, I was gone from his life. And somehow, that hurt less than I expected. Because now there was nothing left to protect, no relationship to preserve, no hope to hold on to, just truth, cold, clear, final. I pulled the envelope out of my bag, opened it, and looked at everything again. Copies of documents, account information, notes, dates, things I had collected slowly, carefully, quietly. At first, I told myself it was just in case, just to be safe. But now, it was something else, because suddenly I wasn't thinking about survival anymore. I was thinking about balance, about fairness, about consequences. If she wanted to erase me, then she needed to understand what that actually meant. The next few weeks were strange, not good, not easy, but different. I found a small place to stay. Nothing permanent, just enough. I got a job. Long hours, low pay, but it didn't matter because for the first time in years, everything I did belonged to me. No one could take it. No one could rewrite it. No one could pretend I didn't exist. And that changed me. Quickly, I stopped reacting. I started planning. I didn't rush. That was the most important part. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't emotional. It's patient, precise, controlled. And she had no idea I was still in the picture. That was her biggest mistake. She thought removing me from the house removed me from the story. But she forgot something. I had been inside that house long enough to know exactly where to look. I started small. Information first. I checked the accounts I had written down, watched the transactions, patterns, timing. Nothing illegal, nothing dramatic, just awareness. And then I saw it, a transfer, large, unusual, moved quickly from one account to another, and then another one. That's when it clicked. She wasn't just controlling the house, she was moving things, preparing, securing everything in her name, faster than I expected, faster than my father probably realized. And suddenly, this wasn't just about me anymore. This was bigger. Because if she succeeded, there would be nothing left. Not for me, not even for him. And for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I felt certain. Certain that I was right. Certain that I wasn't overreacting. Certain that what I was about to do was necessary. That's a dangerous kind of clarity, because once you have it, you stop hesitating. I made my first move 2 days later. It wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious, but it mattered. I sent something, carefully, anonymously, to someone who would care, someone who would look, someone who would ask questions. And then I waited. Not nervously, not impatiently, just ready. Because this time, I wasn't the one being watched. They were, and they had no idea. It didn't take long. That's the funny part. For years, everything in that house moved slowly, carefully, like nothing could ever really change. But the moment someone started asking the right questions, everything started to fall apart. Fast. The first sign came 3 days later. I was at work when I saw his name on my phone. My father. I stared at it. For a long time, long enough for it to stop ringing, and then it rang again. I answered the second time. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity, maybe closure, maybe something else. His voice sounded different, tight, unsteady. Where are you? Not, are you okay? Not, I'm sorry. Just, where are you? I almost laughed, but I didn't. I'm fine, I said. A pause. Then, you need to come home. Home. That word felt strange, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I don't live there, I said. Another pause, longer this time. Something's wrong, he said. Of course it was. Finally. What do you mean? I asked. I don't want to talk about it over the phone, he said quickly. Just come back, please. Please. That was new. I leaned back in my chair, looked at the ceiling, and for the first time in a long time, I felt calm, not angry, not hurt, just calm, because I already knew. It's about the accounts, isn't it? I said. Silence. Heavy. Then, how do you know about that? I closed my eyes for a second, not to think, just to breathe, because this was the moment everything turned. I told you, I said quietly. I don't live there anymore. And I hung up. I didn't go back that day or the next, because control isn't just about what you do. It's about when you do it. 2 days later, I walked into that house again. Not as a daughter, not as someone asking for space, but as someone who had already taken it. Everything looked the same. That was the strangest part. Same walls, same furniture, same silence, but the energy was different, tense, fragile, like something had cracked and no one knew how to fix it. She was in the living room when I walked in, standing, waiting. Her expression changed the moment she saw me. Not anger, not confidence, something closer to fear. Good. You shouldn't be here, she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. I didn't answer. I just walked past her, straight to my father. He looked smaller. I had never noticed that before. Not physically, just weaker. What did you do? He asked. There it was. Not what happened. Not, are you okay? What did you do? I met his eyes. For the first time in years, I didn't look away. I paid attention, I said. That's all. He shook his head. Confused, frustrated. People are asking questions, he said. About transfers, about signatures, about everything. I nodded, slowly. Yes, I said. They are. My stepmother stepped closer, sharp again, trying to regain control. You think this is funny? She snapped. I looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, she didn't look powerful. She looked exposed. No, I said. I think it's fair. That word hit her harder than anything else. Fair? She repeated. Yes, I said. Fair. Because suddenly, the rules were different. No more quiet manipulation. No more rewriting reality. No more pretending I didn't exist. Everything was out in the open now, exactly where it belonged. You had no right, she said. And that's when I smiled. Not big, not dramatic, just enough. You're right, I said. I didn't. And then I stepped closer, just enough for her to hear me clearly. But you made me part of this. Silence. Complete. Because she understood. Finally. This wasn't random. This wasn't emotional. This was the result of everything she had done. Every decision. Every lie. Every time she chose control over consequence. My father looked between us, lost, trying to catch up to something that had already happened. What is going on? He asked. I turned to him, and for a second, I almost saw the version of him I used to believe in. The one who made promises, the one who said he would choose me. But that version was gone, and I wasn't waiting for him anymore. She's been moving things, I said, quietly, legally, but not cleanly. His face changed instantly. Confusion turned into something else. Realization. You signed things you didn't read, I continued, and she made sure of that. He looked at her, then back at me. And that was it. That was the moment everything shifted. Not because I raised my voice, not because I proved anything, but because the truth was finally louder than her control. My stepmother didn't say anything. She couldn't. Because for the first time, she didn't have a version of the story that worked. And that's when I knew it was over. Not the situation, not the consequences, but her control. The thing she had built everything on was gone. I stepped back, looked around the room one last time, and realized something. I didn't want anything from that house anymore. Not the money, not the approval, not even the past. Because I had already taken the only thing that mattered: control. I'm not here to stay, I said. My father looked at me. Then why did you come back? I paused, just for a second, long enough to let it land, to finish it. And then I walked out. Not rushed, not angry, just done. The rain had stopped. The air felt different, lighter, and for the first time in years, so did I. Because revenge isn't always about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about making sure they can't ignore the truth anymore. And this time, they couldn't ignore me.